What's going on, y'all? My name is Slamuri, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a story in which you probably have not heard yet. Reason being is the only way you can really find things out about this case is to look at old newspaper clippings which are available online, and I will be sharing with you those clippings during this video. So this particular story takes us back to 1914 in a well-secluded area of Randleman County, North Carolina, known as the Pisgah Section. This was an area that was very much cut off from the rest of North Carolina. There was one way in and one way out. In addition to this, many of the families that lived along this road had a history of run-ins with the law, whether that be for producing moonshine or for other criminal acts. They would essentially chop down trees and barricade the roads when they got wind that law enforcement was coming. And the fact that there was only one road going through there and that these families used to barricade it, it could sometimes take law enforcement several hours to respond. As a matter of fact, a lot of the time they would head out to this area, they would be forced to turn around and call in more reinforcements to help them move these heavy trees. Now, there was a man who lived along this road called Lowe Daniels. He, along with several members of his family, were notorious for blockading. And as luck would have it, there is an old newspaper clipping that talks about the man's father being convicted of this in the years prior. And although it is said he was trying to distance himself from the life he had been living in the past years, this was becoming increasingly more difficult as he constantly had a few unwanted guests within his home. These unwanted guests would include that of his sister-in-law, and a man by the name of Edgar. Over the course of the last few years, these unwanted guests made it a habit of just showing up out of the blue. And they wouldn't just stay for a couple of hours, they would stay for days, sometimes weeks at a time. In addition to this, it was during their stays in which they would proceed to eat everything up inside his home and use up most of his supplies, never one time offering to pay up for anything that they had taken. Well, one day, Lowe Daniels would wake up and decide he has had enough of this. He would tell them, "Look, I am going to be heading over to Davidson County for the weekend, and you had better be gone by the time I return." It was at this point he would grab his things and his mule and head on over to Davidson County for that weekend. Well, over the course of that weekend, not one of these individuals would heed this warning whatsoever. As a matter of fact, they would continue to blow through his supplies and eat up all of his food, nor would they offer to even attempt to pay him for anything that they took. And so when he gets back, he walks up to the property, ties up his mule, feeds it and waters it, and comes back into the house. It was at this point he realized that no one had taken that warning seriously. In fact, they are still there and have gone through even more food and more of his supplies. And at this point, Daniels really just sort of shut down. He would stop talking to anyone and everyone, including his wife, and he would go on about his night as usual. And while his wife would notice this, she would continue on about her business as well. That is, until the clock struck 7. With absolutely no warning, Lowe Daniels gets up out of his chair, walks into his bedroom, grabs a 12-gauge shotgun, and pumps a single round into the face of Edgar Varner, killing him instantly. So now, in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina, with no help anywhere in sight, chaos erupts into the Daniels household. He would then turn towards his very own wife, firing yet another round, but this time into the back of her shoulder and her face. Next, as his sister-in-law is standing there trying to wrap her head around this atrocity that she has just witnessed, he would fire yet another round into her, killing her instantly as well. Lastly, his sister would come running out of the kitchen. It was at this point he would turn the gun on her and fire one final round. When everything was said and done, 3 out of the 4 victims would lose their lives. Shockingly, Mrs. Daniels, his wife, would go on to make a full recovery, but the story is not over yet. In an eerily creepy scene that would remind you of something out of the movie Deliverance, Daniels places the shotgun down and builds himself a little fire out of pine knots. It was at this point he grabs his banjo, sits down on the front porch among his dying wife, and proceeds to play it while staring off into the distance all the way up until police arrive, all the while ignoring his wife's pleading calls for help. Mind you, it is just after 7 p.m. and not too long after this, his father-in-law would show up at the property in order to hang out for a little bit. But as he keeps getting closer to the house, all he can hear is the sound of this banjo, but there are no voices. Usually you can hear people moving around on the porch and within the house. And as as soon as he gets within eyesight of the front porch, he would see a river of red flowing off of the front porch. With little to nothing he could do, as he had seen the shotgun on the front porch sitting next to Daniels, he would run off and notify the police as fast as he could. But as stated previously, the Daniels household was quite literally in the middle of nowhere. It would take 5 hours for law enforcement to respond. All the while, Miss Daniels had to sit there after everything that had happened and just simply listen to the sound of that banjo being played. And the only reason that we really have this story is because this is the one that she would tell to everybody in the courtroom after she had made a full recovery. And even after the conviction of Lowe Daniels, he would escape prison twice. The first, he would run off to Kentucky, but later would be captured and sent back to North Carolina. Now, somewhere between his first and second escape, he will begin writing his wife, and ironically, she would write him back. And shortly after his final escape from prison, he would be apprehended while walking through the town of Asheboro, North Carolina, along a railroad. When asked where it was that he was going, he replied that he was on the way to meet his wife. That being said, among a sea of scary stories being posted on a daily basis, that this is one of the few you have not heard yet, and it actually intrigued you. In addition to this, we will be trying to post 3 longer videos every week on this channel, and I will see you on the next one.